Hi, just when you thought it was safe to go back to the movie theater. I'm here to talk about a franchise that never should have been a franchise, like Highlander and The Hangover. And let's not forget Taken. Because the first film made so much money, they thought a sequel would be awesome. Well, I'm going to get into that. I'm talking about Jaws. Dun, 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 dun. Well, first it was a novel by Peter Benchley that was destined to be made into a movie. Directed by Steven Spielberg, and his directing career really took off after this. He was getting more big projects after another. The first Jaws film centers around a town called Amity. A peaceful town and it's pretty big during the summertime. But when a swimmer named Chrissy Watkins is killed, devoured, Martin Brody, the town sheriff, played by Roy Scheider, begins to suspect it was a shark. But he gets overthrown by the mayor, played by Murray Hamilton. They're saying, oh, it could have been a boating accident, and all that stuff. But the next day, when he's at the beach with his wife and kids, and he's watching the ocean he's watching the people on the beach very carefully. The shark kind of kills a young boy. And then he realizes this was what happened to Chrissy and the boy was no boating accident. It was a shark. So Matt Hooper from the Oceanographic Institute comes to Amity to help, and he's played by Richard Dreyfuss. Very good in the role. He's very charismatic. And when he studies the body, he discovers it was not a boating accident. But the mayor, played by Murray Hamilton, is so stubborn he won't close down the beaches because money. That's more important to him. So they scour the beaches and they scour the waters for the shark and and Martin's son Michael almost gets eaten by a shark because he doesn't move. The shark doesn't attack him. Attacks another guy instead. So Martin, Hooper, and a grizzled fish shark hunter named Quint, played by Robert Shaw, go out to hunt the shark. And of course, you know the rest of it. I gotta say, I like the scene where Spielberg sets up the shot when he's on the beach through Martin's perspective, as he's carefully watching the waters and and at the same time he's watching it carefully because he's trying to be on standby, but and he was helpless to save the boy, even though he would try. You know, you kind of see him, and all that stuff. And the scene where the mother slaps Roy Scheider, just the guilt's killing him and all that stuff. And I also love the scene where he's feeling down at dinner and his young son imitates him. And for a second, that kind of brings him up a bit, but it was just an adorable scene. It's those moments that are set up quite well. I mean, but the scenes with the shark are pretty good. Now, from what I hear, that the shark was not working in the first couple of weeks of filming, but that kind of worked in the film's favor because not seeing the shark proved to be just as terrifying. Like Spielberg said when filming, like he said on the scene about the film Duel, when they don't see the truck driver's face, Spielberg said the unseen can be just as terrifying as what's thrown right in front of you. And Quint, I gotta say, Robert Shaw was pretty good as the grizzled fisherman Quint. He's just, you get the feeling he's seen a lot of rough times, and he just has that sort of look about him. I like the scene where he's telling the story about the Indianapolis and when he was on the Indianapolis and how and it was in shark-infested waters, and said he was lucky to get out alive. Such a memorable acting by Robert Shaw. Now I heard he and Richard Dreyfuss did not get along during the filming, but whatever happened on camera definitely didn't come through on camera. And Quint, probably meets an bad fate by the teeth of the shark as he gets eaten alive. And Martin Brody throws a gas tank into the shark's mouth and shoots it, blows it up, says, "Smile, you SOB," and it blows up. And he and Hooper make it back to safety. Now Jaws was such a runaway hit, broke box office grounds, made the careers of I don't know if it made the career of Roy Scheider. Roy Scheider was asked to be in a lot of stuff after that. So was Richard Dreyfuss and Steven Spielberg. After that, he was directing bigger films. Man, he became the top sought-after director. Although he does say filming Jaws was a miserable experience, it definitely made his career. Now, after the runaway hit Jaws there have been so many wannabes, like Tentacle, about an octopus, Orca, about a killer whale, and Piranha. And they probably thought, oh, since there have been so many of these wannabes, let's make a sequel. Now, Jaws 2 was really meant to be a prequel. The Indianapolis story Quint tells. But you know how the studio's like, no, don't make it different. Make it another rehash of the first film and all that stuff. Blah blah blah. Well, they did later make an Indianapolis movie and was directed by Ron Howard and starred Nicolas Cage. I don't know. Could a Jaws prequel you think a Jaws prequel about the Indianapolis could have worked? Could have. Yeah, it's 4 years later. Roy Scheider returns to the role of Martin Brody. Murray Hamilton comes back as the mayor and all that stuff, and the town, and Lorraine Gary comes back as Brody's wife. Although his kids are there, but they've been recast because it's 4 years later and they're much older. And the town that seemed to suffer from the shark attack seems to have recovered. But after an underwater explorer is killed and the skier has an unfortunate accident, Martin begins to suspect it's another shark. But the whole town says he's crazy, even the mayor. Wow, you didn't learn nothing 4 years ago? He was right the first time. Why are you taking him for granted now? Oh, yeah, and Martin's oldest son, Mike, likes to go out sailing with his friends. Well, you think after that experience with the shark, he'd be afraid of the water, but nope. I guess he likes to be a part of the popular crowd. Oh yeah, Martin causes quite a stir in the scene when he goes on the shark tower and he thinks it's another shark, when it really wasn't. But yeah, he gets fired. Then his two sons go out sailing with friends and they get ambushed by a shark and all that stuff. And Martin goes out there to catch the shark, to stop the shark and to rescue the kids. I like that scene. It's a pretty memorable scene where he's like, "Come on, Debbie!" When he gets across this electrical wire and he knows how to attract the shark. They have incredible hearing under how to distract to get their attention and he knows the sharks aren't the biggest thinkers. No, and he come on, you bastard! And he goes, he electrocutes the shark. He says, "Open wide, say ah!" Wow, it didn't quite become a catchphrase like "Smile, you SOB." Pretty memorable face-off scene with the shark, and all's well that ends well. Now, from what I hear, Roy Scheider did not have any fun doing Jaws 2. It said, despite the problems the first Jaws movie had, Jaws 2, he had more fun doing Jaws 2 despite some of the problems. Jaws 2 was just a miserable experience. They had two directors come in. First they had John Hancock. Now I heard one story that he quit the project because he was totally unequipped to handle the project. But later I'm hearing another version that says, no, he didn't quit. He was fired. And they brought in Juno Schwartz, who didn't really click with Roy Scheider, the two. And like I said, it was, despite his unhappiness being in the film, I gotta hand it to Roy Scheider. He never phones it in. He gives a real good, top-notch performance. Shows you what a dedicated actor he is. It was good and all that stuff. Was it a hit like the first Jaws? Kind of. It was a hit, but it wasn't the big hit like the first film. Juno Schwartz wanted to expand the shark more. Show more of the shark. Make it more slasher movie territory. What Spielberg was trying to avoid with the first film became the second film. Now, 5 years later comes Jaws 3. Or in other versions, it's Jaws 3D because in movie theaters it was in 3D. I was 8, I didn't see it in 3D. Some part of me wish I had, but you know how it is. And I saw it when it came on HBO. And I gotta say it was pretty decent. I mean, I like the idea of they're probably taking Jaws into a new territory, trying to not make it a rehash of the first two films. You take it into SeaWorld, it takes it to SeaWorld, like Westworld and Jurassic World. Not similar, but not quite. And they add the Brody Boys in, played by Dennis Quaid and John Putch. That was kind of decided at last minute. They wanted to make it different, but make it somewhat of a connection to the first film. Screenwriter Richard Matheson didn't like that part, but he was outvoted. Yeah, Dennis Quaid plays the oldest son, Mike Brody, and he and his girlfriend, Kay, played by Bess Armstrong, help co-run SeaWorld. Well, Mike Brody's the boss. I mean, Calvin Bouchard's the head boss, but he's like second in command, and Kay is an expert with the fish and the dolphins. Here's what they could have did. If they wanted to connect to the first film, they could have one guy, Mike, could have asked, how do you know so much about, could have asked Kay, how do you know so much about dolphins pretty well? I studied at the Oceanographic Institute under Matt Hooper. That's how they could have connected to the first film. Just an idea what they could have did, but they didn't. And you see the Brody Boys. Mike, played by Dennis Quaid, and Sean, played by John Putch. Man, they aged quite fast. It looked like they aged over the course of 10 years, despite the fact of being 5 years. Looking at them, you would think it was 10 years later, not 5 years later. But I'm willing to suspend a little disbelief. I was actually surprised to hear Dennis Quaid was jacked up on cocaine during the filming of Jaws 3. But it's really a bummer. Because when I was a kid, Dennis Quaid was the man. Well, he still is. And I gotta hand it to Bess Armstrong. Even like Roy Scheider, she never seems to be phoning it in. Her performance is pretty top notch. Louis Gossett Jr. And let's not forget Simon McCorkindale as Mr. Fitzroyce, Philip Fitzroyce. He's kind of like this famous celebrity shark hunter. He's kind of like this film's version of Quint, but has a more charm and sleaziness to him. He starred in that ill-fated series Manimal that same year. I think in one episode his character turned himself into a dolphin. Don't remember that episode, but yeah. And he's pretty decent in the role. I mean, and all that stuff. And is Jaws 3 bad? Yeah, it's like Tommy Wiseau's The Room. It's bad, but it's enjoyably bad. It's like one of those bad films you just can't help be entertained by. It's just and all that stuff, and just I mean, I like the idea they take it into a different location, SeaWorld and all that, and it kind of watching it more times today, it makes me wish I could go to SeaWorld and all that. I mean, I think it was a pretty decent film for what it did. I mean, I don't think the 3D effects were that great. No, they don't even expand much on the 3D effects as they tried. Scenes with the shark were okay. They weren't. They did best with what they could do. I mean, and all that stuff, and all that. I mean, I think it was a pretty okay film. Now, 4 years later, it came out with Jaws: The Revenge. Why is it not called Jaws 4? Because the production was a studio saying, "Oh, heck with Jaws 3. That didn't happen. No, that didn't happen. No." And all that. No, they were, I think they were pretty grossed out by how Jaws 3 turned out. They're trying to bring things back to basics with Jaws 4. Not Jaws: The Revenge, sorry. And all that. Lorraine Gary reprises her role as Mrs. Brody, and I gotta say, she jumps back in the role like she never left. That's how good of an actress she is. It also includes Michael Caine as... Great, now I forgot his name. Hobie, sorry. As a charming fisherman. No, he's not a charming. He's not a fisherman. He's a pilot, sorry. He's not basically the Quint of this movie, no. That would be Mike, the oldest son Mike, this time as sort of the Quint. Well, he's not a Quint. He studies mammals and all that stuff, and his Jamaican friend, played by Mario Van Peebles, who really overdoes the Jamaican accent. he just goes overboard. Maybe he was just trying to be Jamaican, trying to act Jamaican and all that stuff, but I'm going off track a bit. And then I gotta say, Sean at the very beginning is eaten by a shark, and he's played by Mitchell Anderson. I heard Mitchell Anderson later say in an interview about that, saying, I was just acting scared. I wasn't reacting off anything. I wasn't with the shark in that scene. And Mike, this time played by Lance Guest. I gotta say something about Lance Guest. I liked him in The Last Starfighter. I do. But here he just didn't really give off anything to me. He didn't really grab my interest much. Mike's married with a daughter. He has an argument with his wife. His wife's a welder, and she's holding a torch right in front of him, and he says this line, "I was going to make love to an angry welder. I dreamed of nothing more than I was a small boy." I could tell that was a corny line, and I could tell by the actress who played his wife, Karen Young, even she gives him the reaction like, oh, her reaction was lame. And of course, Mrs. Brody, I forgot her first name. She's paranoid about going in the water, and she says, when Sean is eaten by the shark, she said, "Oh, this time it waited for him. It came and it waited for him." And Mike's trying to be convinced. Sharks don't commit murder. They don't pick out a person. It killed your brother. It killed your father. He said, "Oh no, Dad died of a heart attack." He died of fear. The fear of it killed him. The fear of sharks killed him. This is the same guy who blew up one shark and he electrocuted the other, and you're gonna say he died of fear? That's an insult to his character. You could have just simply said he died of a heart attack. Should have been fine with that. Actually, they thought about approaching Roy Scheider to reprise his role just briefly to get killed off by a shark, but they knew he wasn't interested. When asked Roy Scheider about that, Roy Scheider responds, "They were right not to even ask." Yeah, I guess you understood that. And Murray Hamilton was asked to reprise his role as the mayor. He would have done it, but he got cancer and later passed away. The movie has a few returning characters from the first film, like Mrs. Kittner and some other extras and all that. And I like the relationship between Mrs. Brody and Hoagie, played by Michael Caine. There's like a big romance between them. Then out of nowhere, she gets psychic connections with the shark. The shark. Anybody's going to believe the shark followed her all the way to Amity, traveled all the way there to come see where Mike and his family are. Nobody's going to believe a shark's out for revenge. Didn't in Jaws 2 that was even stated? When Martin Brody's asking about experts saying if I killed one shark, could another shark? And says, sharks don't take things personal. You're going to say this shark wants revenge, because because Martin Brody killed 2 of his family members. Oh, yeah. There is a scene where they're going on this banana ride and the shark comes out and the granddaughter, Mike's daughter's there, and you're thinking it's going to go for her, but it goes for this other woman. Yeah, what has she got to do with your revenge? It's like, oh, what did she kick you when you were just a baby fishy? That's a pretty lame revenge. And sadly, I gotta say, the girl who played the daughter, Mike's daughter, was Judith Barso, sadly killed a year later at the age of 10 by her own father. Tragic life. We lost too early. Real sad. And why does Mrs. Brody have a psychic connection with the shark? Never explained. Well, here there was supposed to be an explanation, but they cut it out. You left the audience thinking, what the heck did I just watch? Oh, and when they go off to fight the shark, when Mario Van Peebles, character's name was Jake, gets eaten by the shark, and they ram the shark, he just blows up. How did the shark just blow up? At least in two Jaws movies, you had an explanation why he blew up. Here, it's like he just spontaneously combusted. Okay, there was a version where Mrs. Brody rammed the shark and she suffocated him. And he just died. They figure, that didn't run well, but they didn't run over well with test audiences, so they reshot the ending. And because of that, Michael Caine had to miss his Oscar speech for Hannah and her sister. But he bought a nice house for his mother, so out of one bad thing came another good thing. Yeah, Jaws the Revenge was just as bad. I mean, Jaws 3 was entertainingly bad. Jaws the Revenge, not so much. Oh, it just was. I didn't like it. I liked Lorraine Gary's performance. Michael Caine does okay. I heard, what was it like working with Michael Caine? Oh, he never gives off that spoiled movie star like attitude. He comes on the set, he goes, hey, how's it going? How you doing? All that stuff. So he was like one of the guys. Jaws 2 was alright, but here's the thing, why make a sequel when it wasn't necessary? Should have just stuck with one film and all that. So that was the end of the Brody saga, the Jaws series and the Brody story. But it wasn't the end for shark movies, because shark movies, there's still shark movies today, like Deep Red, Deep Blue Sea, and The Shallows. So So you got to say there's probably going to be more shark movies to come. They owe it all to Jaws. Dun, 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 dun. Have a good one.